we practice any musical instrument to both have a physical understanding of the instrument. So we're practicing something physically, as well as trying to get a mental understanding. We're trying to mentally understand what we're doing. The two may not happen together. Sometimes we just do something physically for a few weeks, and only after a few weeks does it start to click, like, oh, that's what's happening. There's a space between my fingers, and that space is of a note. So when we're practicing, we're mindful of the exercises as much as we can be. Some days you might be very mindful and something might click and there's an understanding happening. And most days, it's just the physicality of it. I've had so many times of sitting in front of the television, whether it's with my accordion or just the piano, and my fingers are just doing this. I can't even hear what I'm doing, but it's the physicality of putting my hands on the keyboard. What I was doing there was my C major triads. A lot of people, I know, Doug, you've written to me too, where you're imagining the keyboard in your head and you're not physically practicing on the keyboard, but you're imagining it in your head. Oh, what are those series of notes? So you're immersing yourself in your instrument. The 15 minutes of practice that I'm going to be showing you now, and if you have your instrument, please bring it out, applies to any instrument. I have my recorder here, and I'll show you afterwards. It's the same kind of practice regardless of instrument. We're aiming for consistency of physicality. We're always going to use the same fingers, so that 2 years from now, all that practice amounts to consistency of playing, which leads to speed. And especially with the accordion, as we're doing these exercises, we're aiming for consistency in sound, which means bellow control. So when we do our right hand exercises, we're very conscious of the sound being consistent. We're doing these exercises in a controlled way. When we're playing our left hand exercises, we're playing it in a controlled way. When we're doing the ear training exercises, we're trying to play back the exercises in a controlled way as well. So let me share my screen just to show you an agenda of what we're doing. Hello, Yeva. And we'll do it. I'll intersperse a little bit of commentary about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and how a beginner versus an intermediate player might adjust the practice. In general, I love the discussion that's happening. Good. I wanted to pull up accordionlove.com as well. So let me share my screen. We have a lesson. So on accordionlove.com, I don't know if you could see my cursor. You cannot. Over on the lessons, there's a 15-minute, over on the basics section. Under left-hand technique, there's 15-minute practice for beginner accordion players. There's the video, and I'll link you to the video. It's on YouTube as well. It's called 15-minute practice for beginner accordion. We split up the 15 minutes into right-hand technique, left-hand technique, and song practice, the song that you're working on. So your 15 minutes, we're working on right-hand technique, which includes scales, arpeggios, and triads. You see that here. We're going to do left-hand technique, where depending on what you're doing, you're really working on just left hand. And then working your right and left hands through the song that you're working on. That might mean playing through the passage of a song, memorizing the passage of a song, or working on something particularly tricky. We'll do that as an example. The other two parts that we're going to put into the 15 minutes of practice, if you go to accordionlove.com and you scroll down, I have a few blog posts. One is ear training exercises. If you have an extra 2 minutes, I would do this every day. I have a series of exercises here. I'm going to scroll down to let's scroll down to the actual exercises. I give a few examples. There are 8 exercises here. There are more exercises here on the January 2021 monthly challenge. I encourage you to do these as much as possible to become familiar with the sound of the accordion, to translate what you hear to what you play. Good. Let's start the actual exercise. This is what you should, I don't like saying should, but we'll say it now. This is what you should do when you practice. This is my recommendation to what to do when you practice. This is the agenda. Let me come back to the video. So the song that I'm going to be working on is, for beginners, Mary Had a Little Lamb in C major. Wonderful. So Mary Had a Little Lamb in C major. That's the song that I'm working on now. My 15 minutes of practice. We'll start with right hand scales. If you're new to the accordion, let's do a C major scale. And the fingering for a C major scale, it's a downloadable PDF on Accordion Love, is going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. The thing to pay attention to is sliding the thumb under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is what the right hand scale looks like. I'm aiming for consistency of sound. Under. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Backwards on the way down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. 5. I'm looking down. Consistent tempo. Each note is being held for the same time, and I'm trying to control the bellows correctly. If you're an absolute beginner, find that C. Work with your elbow, make sure there's no shoulder tension. There's a lot to keep track of, but in general, aim for that consistency. Try not to shake the bellows too much. This is not accordion playing. It's a lot smoother. Under. 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 Starting to not look. Making sure this is loose, but still engaged. And starting and ending with my thumb. If you're ending on your fourth finger or doing this, that's okay. Pay attention to it. Move on next time. I do have, I'll share my screen really quickly. On the lesson for 15 minutes of practice, I show the fingering for the C scale, 1 octave and 2 octaves, as well as the arpeggios together and broken, including which fingering. When you see 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 5, these are our fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's available on the lesson page as well. And again, there's a free 3-day trial. You can access the stuff and go through it. Thank you for Kate's bravo. The next thing we're going to do in C major, that's what we're starting with. Sorry, to go back to the scales, if you're an advanced player, do the scale without looking and increase your tempo. So, if you're a more advanced player, work on the phrasing of the scale. Work on your volume. Start working with dynamics of the scale. Try and do scales that are legato or staccato. Good. But beginners, just work on consistency. Next thing that we're going to do is work on triads and arpeggios, also known as chords and their voicings. You're going to work on figuring out your C major chord. A chord is made up of 3 notes. C major has a C, E, and G. Those 3 notes we can play like this. I'm using fingers 1, 3, and 5. I'll always use fingers 1, 3, and 5 to hit a chord. You tell me to hit a chord, I'm likely going to use the exact same fingers so that I can play quickly and consistently. If your fingers are 1, 2, and 3, fine. Make a note of it, so every time you practice, you're hitting using the same notes. So this is a C, C, E, G. This is a C as well, E, G, C. That's called a chord voicing or chord variation. The G, C, E is also a C major. All the things sound like a C major. And our practice is to switch between those voicings together, hitting all the notes together, and then hitting them broken, separating the notes. Let's do it together. 3 notes, C, E, and G, because that's our C major chord. I have a lesson on building major and minor chords. So practice looks like this. Oh, I slid there. Together, now broken. And if I do, redo it till it's clean, and now down. My shoulders are relaxed, my fingers are nice and curled. Whichever way gets me consistent volume, whatever way allows me to have that consistent sound and tempo in my practice. Beginner players, it's okay for the first few weeks that you do this to look down and to build the chord C. Your practice, if you're an absolute beginner, might be to press C while looking down. Keep your finger there and look away. Try and make sure you're still pressing C. Scary. Take your hand away and try and come back to that chord as quickly as you can. You'll need to form your fingers at first. And that part about mentally understanding what you're doing, start to see that there's a space between each note. Try and understand that this is the shape, whichever fingering you're using, that you can come back to. After a few months, start to see that this shape of a note between works on many, many chords. This is also an F major. That's on an F major. This is also an F major. This is also a G major. This is also an A minor. It's also an E minor. To become faster, advanced beginner players and intermediate players work on triads and arpeggios without looking. And in order to do that a little bit faster, you're not reforming the notes, the chords every time. We're not doing this. Our fingers are sliding. And so that's what practice looks like for you. Together and broken. Consistent in sound and tempo. Advanced beginner players, legato and staccato. Good. That's our right hand practice, just to show you where we are in our 15 minutes of practice. We just did our right hand for 6 minutes, scales, triads, and arpeggios. I'm working on Mary Had a Little Lamb, so I'm practicing that in C major. If I'm practicing a different song, the Valse d'Amélie, I'm going to do those same exercises in D minor, because D minor is the main chord of the Valse d'Amélie. So etc. Next, we're going to move on to the left hand technique, incremental chord jumps and chord jumps for a specific song that we're working on. Let's see what that looks like. Absolute beginners, what 15 minutes of practice looks like for you on the left hand is finding the chord. I have a full series of lessons called Mastering the Left Hand of the Accordion. It's a free series of videos. You're just finding the C major. You're looking down, maybe sitting with your accordion like this, finding the C, making sure it's with your correct finger, whether it's your fourth or third, and finding this. Finding the C, taking your hand away. Looking, finding the C, taking your hand away. Not looking, finding the C, taking your hand away. Good. becoming familiar with the physicality of it. We're not understanding what we're doing yet. We're starting to become familiar. Then looking for the row, hitting a C major without looking to get that physicality, that distance, that space. So that even without an accordion, you'll find yourself doing this, replicating that space of the notes of your specific accordion. C major. Starting to do incremental bass jumps. So knowing majors and minors consistently with the same fingering every time. Then doing incrementally larger bass jumps from C major, that distance, from C to G. Understand what that distance looks like. Can you play a G major without looking? At first, for sure, you're looking. And you might do this. Too many fingers. That's okay. Your practice for the next few weeks, making sure your fingers, you're getting clean sound, you're getting a crisp sound. We're not doing that yet. Just back and forth. What I mean by incremental bass jumps, these are just notes that are next to each other. Incrementally, we're making those spaces bigger. So from C, skip one, go to the next one. D. And we're starting to do that, almost like feeling, like reading Braille, right? Getting our fingers to not hover too high above. That makes wayfinding very difficult. C major, D major, back and forth. Aim for 4, 5 consistent jumps. And if we screw up, okay, what happened? Look down. I switched rows. What practice looks like then for me? Consistent volume. Not too loud, not too quiet. Once I'm comfortable with that distance, make it bigger. The intermediate player, larger bass jumps. Si, boom, pa. You should be able to do this without looking, a clean and crisp waltz rhythm. C major. With a clean sound. For your accordion, you know what your bellows are like. You know how much air leaks. Left hand, smooth, consistent waltz rhythm. Switching. This should come along without sheet music, without looking. This is practice. In whatever rhythm. Maybe it's an alternate bass technique you're working on. Right? This is the Mary had a little lamb. Now we're getting into song practice, but that's what that looks like. And more advanced players, larger bass jumps. If you're working on a C major to A minor for Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, that's what practice looks like. C major, A minor. And you're sliding your finger along those. If you're working on a klezmer song, D7, C minor, D7. That's what it means to chord jumps for a specific song that you're working on. So we're doing incremental chord jumps. Chord identification in general, start off easy, and then chord jumps for a specific song that you're working on. We're doing that just for 4 minutes. So again, making sure that our left hand physicality is very clear. So your fingers can do this. And you can imagine in your head what it's like to hit a D major to an A minor, just like our right hand can do this in the air to hit chords. The last piece is song practice. We're going to play through the passage of a song, memorize the line of passage of a song. What I'm going to show you here, if we go back to just the main site of accordionlove.com, I would I would encourage you to read this blog post on how to play and memorize your first accordion song by ear. I share the notes for Mary Had a Little Lamb. You could read through this as well. There, Mary Had a Little Lamb, the sheet music. follow these steps? Do you know how to play the song? Do we know how to coordinate both of our hands together? I have another blog post, sorry to jump between them, on the how-to guide to coordinating your hands on the accordion. This is really where it all comes together. Our right hand and our left hand. All sorts of exercises about how to work with our right and left hand. Let me show you in 5 minutes what it looks like for Mary Had a Little Lamb. Good. For Mary Had a Little Lamb, I'm pulling up the sheet music. I'm trying to do playback exercise using my scales to not run out of fingers. Those might be the only notes that I'm working on today. I'm not playing both hands. I'm trying to memorize this melody or understand this melody. La da 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 ba ba. Whatever song you're working on, it might be ba ba da da da. I'm looking at the sheet music. I'm looking at my fingers first. I'm not starting with my pinky because there's no need to. Starting with my three strong fingers. After I do that little passage, as much as possible, I'm trying to maybe look away from the sheet music. Trying to find that E without looking down. Aiming for consistent volume, aiming for consistent tempo, cadence when I'm playing. Maybe that's all I do today with my right hand. Memorize. More advanced players introduce dynamics to these simple songs. Play it up here. Maybe that's what I'm working on. Left hand for the song. It might be the chord change that I'm struggling with, from the C major to G major. So I'm working on the left hand of the song. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Maybe that's my practice for 5 minutes today. I take 30 seconds to try and do this. And my left hand is switching between C major and G major and singing or humming over it. Do-da, 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 da. Maybe my musicality is struggling for the song. More advanced players, once you have those two sides memorized being I'm not struggling, once you have those two sides without mistakes. You cannot play Mary Had a Little Lamb if you're struggling to switch between C and G, because you'll stumble every time, and then the right hand stumbles. So, do. That has to happen. My singing over the left hand, and then very slowly. Keeping in mind my bellows might close, my shoulders might be, 7 things might be happening at the same time, and that's okay. I'm not going to look at the chord change. If you screw up, that's okay, let's look. My next practice means switching between the C and the G. And this is the same for any song that we're doing. If I'm playing a new tango, same kind of thing. If there's a big jump from a D to an E flat and I keep stumbling, that's the jump that I'm doing. And that's what accordion practice looks like. The other thing, I'll finish off by doing ear training exercises. I'm not going to do it right now, but it means doing the ear training exercises. Again, let me show you. I'll share my screen. We'll go back to accordionlove.com and we'll do hand-ear coordination exercises for the accordion. I'm going to show off the monthly challenge just because it was awesome. There are exercises there too. But in general, you click here and you see people, hey Byron, you're going to do the ear training exercises. Byron here does the ear training exercises, and then he suggested ear training for other people on the forum as well. And you could see the replies. Who is messaging me? That's okay. Anyways, wonderful. That's what 15 minutes of practice looks like. Do it as consistently as you can, multiple times a week. Wonderful. And again, the main goal of practice is to get the physicality of your instruments in place and to start to get a mental understanding of your instrument, of the connection between chords. Let me come back to the chat because I've been ignoring you for a bit. One other note, it's the same thing. I don't play recorder well. If I was to practice the recorder using these techniques, being fingering for scales, even quietly, if I carry this and during a work meeting, which I do anyway, not with a recorder, but with my keyboard, my fingers are going over scales, over arpeggios, da, 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 right? Wonderful. And even with this instrument, I'm aiming for physicality, consistency of sound, tempo, so my fingers get used to it, so my breath gets used to it. Doing those triads, I think just broken. I don't think you can do it together, but working on all of those separate things. Wonderful. I'll pause there. I'm going to take a drink of water and just go through the chat a little bit. If you're still here, thank you for sticking around. I'll take this little portion and cut it out so it's its own video. And again, we have the fingering for these exercises on Accordion Love. Whatever you do, just please be consistent so that if I say play an F major, my fingers are here and they land on an F major. That's twice that I've missed it.